And action. Welcome to another amazing episode of the Action Podcast. Today, we have Crimson Tide on tap, the submarine movie from 1995. And I'm joined today with Drew Stewart, who is the reigning champion. He won the Tombstone episode, so he's in the 2 spot today. And
Nice.
then my brother Pete, of course, is also joined. And fans, we're gonna do something different today because we're only 3 of us. We're gonna do a group vote who wins. I'm gonna actually compete this time. This will be my first episode I actually compete in, and we'll basically 2 out of 2. The whoever gets the 2 points wins. If nobody nobody picks the 2, then we'll just award no points. So
Democratizing the process. What could go
yeah,
wrong?
we're although we're not here to preserve, or we're not here to practice democracy. We're here to preserve democracy. So
True.
Yes, and we've seen how our Congress works. It works flawlessly. So
yeah,
this is bound to go
this should not
amazing.
be a disaster at all. But
What a mess they are.
this movie is directed, of course, by Tony Scott,
Us.
who also directed Top Gun and Beverly Hills Cop 2 before this. Those were his 2 big hits before this. Of course, he did much other movies after this. This was written by Michael Schiffer. He's the main writer. He wrote Colors as well as Lean on Me before this movie. And then Richard P. Henrick also contributed on the writing. He had no other writing credits, though. So I'm actually curious to know what his writing credits. And then, fun fact, they actually brought in a lot of other writers to pump up the script. And man, they go ahead, Pete.
Ooh, 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 ooh. I know that they brought in Quentin Tarantino for sure.
Yeah, because they had worked together on True Romance. So Quentin Tarantino did a lot of the comic book references. Like whenever there was a reference of comic books, he was those that was from the mind of Quentin Tarantino.
But
That
I
makes
thought
that makes
I thought
sense. That was such a weird non sequitur.
Yeah.
no, but I thought he wrote if it wasn't the scene where they're all the leaders are sitting around the table, he wrote the one about the horses, the Lippensoners or whatever they're called.
I think you're right about the Lippens honors.
I
Uh,
think he wrote that they needed like a scene,
yeah.
and he came in, he just kind of wrote it out real fast. And
Robert Towne was also brought in, who's another big time screenwriter. He did the scene that you're talking about where they're all at the table and
okay, so
talking
then he
about,
did the Lippens honors.
okay.
I did not know all that. It's impressive how good and cohesive the script is, given how many cooks are in the kitchen, especially like big
Yeah, and I
ones.
think they just literally brought him in for like, we just need you to write the scene. Like, we need
No,
this.
exactly. Like when you have a whole script, but there's like just one thing that's just there's something just bothers you about it. You bring in somebody who's just comes in and just crushes just that one scene. It doesn't have to fit in with anything else,
Yeah.
until the ending, obviously. But
And
wow.
it actually makes sense now because I was even thinking about that. Like, I was just when I was watching this, I was just like, man, like some of these like examples are just so like, man, you got to know some stuff in order to, to write this. You know what I mean? And so now it makes sense that it's multiple minds on this as opposed to it's just one writer because man, you got to be so like next level ideas to come up with some of this stuff. So it actually made more sense when I was like, oh, it's multiple guys. I'm like, ah, good, because it's a lot of pressure to try and go toe to toe with this script. So, and this also stars Gene Hackman, Denzel Washington, Viggo Mortensen, who wasn't actually that huge at the time, and also a young James Gandolfini who had yet to do Sopranos. So this, and there,
Yeah, he just done True Romance as well. He was in that.
right. Did you know Rick Schroeder was in this movie too?
Yeah,
I
there's
never
a
knew that.
there's a ton of smaller actors who became bigger. There was Ryan Philippe was in the
Right?
movie.
Yeah,
Steve Zahn
Steve
was in the
Zahn. Yeah,
movie as well. Ricky Schroeder, Gandolfini, and Vigo. Yeah, I mean, there's a
a bunch of guys that were in like Fabrizio from Titanic. He was
mhm.
Rivetti, and then one of the guys from
Who had
The
the
Rock.
worst accent in Titanic, by the
Oh
way.
yeah.
Oh my God,
Um,
we're going to go on to the Titanic. Oh my God.
Second only to that guy in the Valachi papers.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
he's so bad.
uh, and it's this movie. If for some reason you have not seen this movie, first of all, go check this out. But the movie is about on a U.S. nuclear missile sub. a young first officer stages a mutiny to prevent his trigger-happy captain from launching his missiles before confirming his orders to do so. And yeah, the main reason we're watching this film is, this to me is one of the preeminent military thrillers. This is coming off of Top Gun, which I think is, especially because the Navy helped contribute with that one. This is this kind of new era where, you know, the U.S. Department of Defense looks at this as like a marketing piece, and so they help a little bit of it. So a lot of like the visuals and everything is on a higher level than it's ever been, like the production design, all that good stuff. And I always, I studied this movie in film school, and the editing in this film was, one of the best edited pieces I'd ever seen. And this is how I learned a lot of my own style of editing, was to watch this film over and over and over again. So that was a big part of, for me, like why this movie was important. And then this was just, I just thought this movie was next level script writing, with the way the characters, again, like we just kind of talked about it, but how the characters were set up, but then also like the verbal battles that they would go throughout this, that just kind of led obviously to the conclusion. I'll get more into my mind, but I just wanted to kind of set the stage for what we're talking about. But Drew, let's start with you. What first of all, talk about maybe the first time you watched this film, and then go into why this movie stands out for you.
Yeah, I have not seen this in a long time, and I trying to remember actually the first time I watched it. It was not, do not think I saw it in the theaters. I think we watched it, like, rented the movie with my parents, like probably late high school. And my dad is a giant like fan of like this sort of genre of spy type thrillers, both books and movies. And so I think we watched it there, and then I saw it a few more times, like kind of in rapid succession, and then I took quite a few years off. But it to me was then a phenomenal film and still is today. It was interesting going back and watching it this time, like some of the technology in it feels hokier now. But outside of some of those pieces of this, it holds up so well. And I know we're going to get into all the reasons why that is, but I feel like this was probably one of my first experiences seeing Denzel. And I just remember then, as I do again rewatching it, of just looking at him and watching him and thinking, oh my gosh, this guy's charisma is unbelievable. I already felt that way about Gene Hackman. So Gene Hackman was a little bit more of a known commodity to me. But Denzel just leaps off the screen, and the way he stands up to him, and that the relationship between those two. And I don't want to give too much away because I hope we'll save some of this for some of the later categories.
Yeah.
But I just, it for me, then was like, oh my gosh, Denzel, who is this guy? He's awesome. And just a really, really good thriller. Like you mentioned earlier, like it's a war movie, and it's obviously set kind of like in a war setting, but it really is a character study of these two guys, and sort of like the moral implications of what they had to do. So it's just a really, I think, thoughtful, and well executed film.
Yeah. Pete, what do you got?
Well said, Drew. Goodness gracious. Tough competition, as always. Yeah, this came out, I was a senior in high school, and this is about the time where, I started like buying Tarantino books, but they were just like literally the scripts of his movies. And it's like when I really started like getting into movies, like for real. Like I always loved movies, but I never broke them down and really tried to analyze them and like what really makes a great movie versus what doesn't. And I remember this movie came out, and this movie has become since then, and that's like 30 years almost later. This is one of my go-to movies when I just want to kind of have something on in the background when I want to do something, because I know it so well. but then I always end up watching it because this movie is just intensity in 10 cities. Like there's just so much tension from start to finish, and it just keeps building all the time. Um, Even the introduction, where it's like a mock sort of newscast of what's going on. It's eerily reminiscent of like almost like kind of like what's going on today. It holds up. It's very relevant,
Yeah.
the subject matter, and so it's kind of funny to kind of look at it in that sense. But you put me in a submarine or put me underwater, in a movie, I'm never going to relax, not even for a second. This is one of these movies that just every 2 seconds, like you feel that pressure that the submarine feels being, 1,800 feet under the water. There's just so much tension every time you get me into a submarine on screen.
Yeah.
Um, and Drew, what you said is true. I mean, I knew Denzel from Glory because I loved Glory. Um, and that was his big thing. That was his coming out party. But then this movie came out, and the greatest thing about Denzel, and the best thing, this is why I consider him one of the greatest actors of all time, is that you really do see and feel every emotion, that he portrays at any given moment, and it's so authentic, and it's real, and it draws you in, and it makes you feel exactly what he's feeling. Like when he's angry, or when he's just been punched in the face and he's standing there very stoic, bleeding, like you are in those scenes.
I was gonna say right before you said that his stoic face
Yeah.
emotes more than any
Yeah,
other actor acting. Like his
Yeah.
just, it's unbelievable.
you
And there's
punch him and he looks at you and you're like, oh shit, like I
and,
should not have done that.
and there's several scenes where he just reacts and doesn't even make a line. And again, I think that's also part of the brilliance of this film is yes, there's dialogue when there's dialogue, but there's also scenes where it's just looks and it just like Pete's saying, it just says so much.
And don't go forward with that one because there's several things later on in other categories where we can
Yeah.
talk about
Yeah.
looks, etc.
Yeah.
And then, finally Gene Hackman. You know, he's just it's unfortunate that he's retired, quote unquote, at this point, because this guy is just he does everything in his power to push Denzel's buttons in this movie. There's a clear racial issue going on at the same time. Um,
No,
no,
I
no,
know.
no, no. There are several examples, and we'll get into that later. But there's a clear problem with the fact that Denzel's black in this movie.
It
I,
it's
I
it's
I've
it's
never looked at it in that lens.
It
I, I agree
it's
with
it's
I agree
it's
with
subtle,
I
but
agree
it's
with
it's
Pete.
there.
I
It's
agree with Pete.
subtle.
It's what we call today that wasn't a term then, like implicit bias, for sure.
And I will expound later
Yeah,
because
I
it's
think I can
important.
count. I think I can counter it, but go ahead.
No, no, no. We'll save it for the rest of the show. But whenever Denzel like is wants to talk and he just kind of lifts up a finger like don't talk, or he challenges everything that kind of comes out of his mouth. The
Yeah, but
Hackman does.
that's not a
No,
racial
I'm
thing.
not. I told you I'm going to get back to the racial
Oh,
stuff later in the episode. I'm continuing on with the
okay.
brilliance of Gene Hackman. Everything. I mean, he's so what's the word? Argumentative in a
Yeah.
way. Like he plays it to perfection, but he does it with this cheerfulness and this glee almost. Like he's chuckling as he does all of this um, really awful breaking down of people around him. And he did it perfectly. Like Gene Hackman just crushed this role. Denzel crushed this role. And then again, this is like lightning in the bottle. This is having a great support cast around you that just does what they needed to do in those moments. Um, Yeah, and that's my experience with Crimson Tide. I just love this film. It's deep. This it's like onion. It's like in
Yeah.
Shrek. This movie is so layered. There's so many things that goes on.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I think for me, I believe this was one of the one like I'm 15 years old, I think, when this movie comes out. And so obviously I love Top Gun. I love Beverly Hills Cop 2. So I'm just learning what Bruckheimer means. And so going into this, I definitely was excited because man, these are the guys that did Top Gun. Like I'm all in. I don't, you didn't have to sell me on anything else. And obviously, our dad was Navy, and so I don't know if I saw it in theaters just because I would have been 15, and that it was rated R. So I don't know if I saw it in theaters, but I know I definitely saw it around when it came out. And for me, like Tony Scott was one of the first directors, if not the first director, where I really noticed his style. And even like in Drew Shot, like he used glass filters because now you can do color correction in post, but back then you shot it that way. So you'd shoot it, there would be it'd be like a half tempered lens. And so even when I would shoot my own stuff, I loved that look that Tony Scott had. And so I would mirror that thing because I just love the way his films look. They had a different look than anybody else. And then, you combine that with the lighting. His lighting was so unique, especially in this film. I mean, there's bright greens, there's bright reds, there's blues. The lighting was very, very significant in this film. And then just the intensity, like Pete's talking, there's so much tension in this film, and it's not just the tight close-ups that part of it, but then you know every character is sweating balls in this film, adding to the tension to it. um and again, it's just you can just tell it's a confined space, and the way the camera moves within the tight space, and on top of that you're adding Hans Zimmer, who really we don't know who he is yet. He's done, I think, Cool Runnings and Lion King at this point, but we don't know him as this action score savant. And he comes in with this film and really does steal the show with, it starts with this scene here, where they do the roll tide, and that anthem comes in, and then it happens again at the end where it just elevates the way you feel and throughout the film. Like Hans Zimmer and Tony Scott were like Steven Spielberg and John Williams. You know what I mean? It's just that next dynamic duo where
There was
you're,
like peas and carrots.
yeah, it was just this next level filmmaking. And again, like combined editing. This is a five-tool film, and so this is one reason why I wanted to do this film, is because this was one of the first films where I honestly I think it's perfect in a lot of ways. Now, obviously, I know, like Drew said, there's maybe some technology stuff that doesn't hold up, but for me, it's
That's not the
still
fault of the film.
no, no, no,
Right.
no.
Yeah. I mean, fast forward to director's chair. Like, I don't know how I'm going to answer that question. I'll be honest.
Yeah, but I think for me, like ultimately, what I loved about this film, and even now, because I feel like I've, obviously, like I think your opinions or maybe how things are different, or your opinions change. I remember watching this and just thinking like, I kind of agree with Denzel Washington, and then you're like, I kind of agree with Gene Hackman, and even like watching this again now, a lot of the times I'm like, yes, but, yes, but, and it's like I can literally maybe side with both guys, and I think ultimately that's what leads kind of to the ending, which I thought was a pretty damn good ending. Also shot at Chapman University, mind you, and that's what makes this, I think, so good, is because even today you're still gonna contemplate what side you're on, or who's right in the argument, who's wrong, and just go through like, I don't know if I would have done that. Like this movie is visceral in that way, where you're really taking part of the argument every single time, and I think your argument can change each time you watch it. I feel like your argument can change. I think that's how good the argument is.
Yeah.
So. All right. Well, let's do with background. I'll start with Drew. Drew, who do you vote for background?
So weird. This is gonna be so weird.
I
Yeah,
know.
this is bizarre.
Um,
You can pick your own too, by the way. Like,
I know, but that feels weird. I'm gonna go Peters, I guess. I think that like it's a very good snapshot of kind of the tension between the two main characters and
yeah, canted angle. Pete, what
And
do you got?
I'm voting for myself too because
Oh, there you go.
this sort of epitomizes the, you know, the way that this movie was created. Like they created these. Oh wait, hold on. This way,
Canted,
they
canted
created
angle.
these. They created these angles where it's like the person who was the dominant character in that scene
Yeah,
is appearing to be higher than the black guy, and we'll get into that later. But then they also do the old Batman whenever there's like a villain on screen, they like tilt the camera a little
canted angle.
bit. Yeah, so I mean, there's just like these little moments throughout the film that contributes.
There you go. All right. Well, Pete will get the point on that one. And
Thank
then
you. Thanks,
explanation.
Drew.
Pete, we'll start with you. Who do you vote for?
Um, well, I mean, I like Drew's, but I gotta be honest, I'm gonna vote for myself because I think I've no, and I'll explain. I think I've brought up some things that we're gonna be discussing later on that are gonna be hot topics,
Sure.
hot things. So
Sure.
I think
Drew, what do you vote for?
go ahead.
well, whatever. Peter is good.
All right. So we 20 to 25 to 0.
Dude, I'm crushing already. This is like Paul said, like I do really good at the beginning and then I just
Yeah.
kind of fade off into the
I love that I was embarrassed to vote for myself and Pete just went 2 for 2. Like
no,
Yeah,
this
I
I'm
is
a
know.
two for
zero.
two.
He's got no shame. Drew,
Dude,
don't
I'm
you
brilliant. I'm
can't have any
brilliant
shame
what I
on this
do.
one.
What I do is brilliant.
I'm basically going to serve as a tiebreaker. That's how, honestly, that's my mindset. That's why I'm letting you guys vote first, and then I'm just going to be a tiebreaker. So,
Dude, 2-0 to nothing already. It's amazing.
all right. Budget and box office. The budget of this film was 53 million, grossed 157 million, which is good. That's a solid return.
Yeah.
7.3 IMDb rating, 66 Metascore. I thought that was kind of low. The top review that I had was 100 from the San Francisco Chronicle, Mick LaSalle, the
He's one of
submarine
my
drama.
favorites. He's
Yeah,
amazing.
the submarine drama, which opens today, has everything you could want from an action thriller and a few other things you usually can't hope to expect. An excellent script, first-rate performances, and a story that has more to do with individuals than explosions. I think that's a perfect review of this movie.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Our boy Roger Ebert, we finally have a movie that he actually likes. This guy,
Rest in peace.
in his system, this would have been a 3.5 star out of 4. Ultimately, it's 88. And oddly enough, Crimson Tide develops into an actor's picture, not just an action movie. There are a lot of special effects, high-tech gadgets, and violent standoffs, yes, but the movie is really a battle between two wills, which I think is spot on.
And I can appreciate it, acknowledge that he would actually recognize that that's what was going on, and not
Yeah.
just do his normal
Oh,
review.
yeah, and this is why I think this is one of the best action films of all time, quote unquote, is because it's really not an action film, and it's obviously much deeper layer than that.
Well, if Ebert likes it, then we have to like it.
And then the lowest one, I definitely had to give the shout out to this one. This one, it got a 40 from the Chicago reader Jonathan Rosenbaum.
Rest in peace.
Yeah. Behind all the macho bluster stand or to appear, sit director Tony Scott, writers Michael Schiffer and Richard P. Henrick, and producers Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer, trying and failing to get all the characters to behave like grown-ups. Like, what are you watching, dude?
Wow.
That's terrible.
He,
All right.
he watched, maybe he was watching Kindergarten Cop and was reviewing that one. And
Well, no, because I like Kindergarten Cop. That was a great film. All right, let's jump into our rank the top 5 Denzel Washington movies. I'll tell you what,
oof,
guys, I thought I had a pretty good handle on this going like before I even like went through the exercise. And then when I started going through the exercise, I was like, oh. And I
all
wrote
right, okay,
I
all
wrote
right.
over 10 films that I would nominate. And that's usually not the case. Usually it's like 7 or 8. But and there's ones I left off that I like that I was just like, I know I'm not even going to vote for you, but man, he's obviously had an excellent career. He's a GOAT. There's no denying that. But I'm definitely curious to hear. Pete, we're going to start with you on this one.
Okay, let's
Pete,
So
do this.
Should we just give you the point now? Should we just
Yeah, I'm voting.
yeah,
I'm voting for my list because it's the
you know,
perfect
Drew, there's
list.
still two of us. So, you don't have to vote for Pete. If he votes for himself, we can still, vote
Yeah,
for each other. So don't succumb to Pete's bullying already. He's trying to Gene Hackman us in this movie.
yes, that's right. And then, I would appreciate when you guys like not say anything
Yeah.
as we're smoking cigars.
You can be
Okay.
you can be like Zimmer or you can be like Cobb, and then I'll be like Denzel Washington. We can overthrow.
Very proud, sir.
All right,
All
Pete.
right. Here's my list. I was gonna go number five. I always like to put something that's a little bit off center. I was gonna go Book of Eli because I absolutely love that movie. I watch it all the
Yeah.
time. Um, but I got a special place in my heart for Inside Man. Like that
Oh
movie is
yeah.
just really great, and it's not a massively challenging role for Denzel, admittedly.
Yeah.
I just love the film. So I'm gonna put that at number five
That's
instead
Spike
of,
Lee, right? Inside Man.
yeah, I think it is,
Yeah, that
instead
was a
of
really
Book
good
of
film.
Eli. Number four, I'm going Glory because that's where we got our introduction to Denzel, and
Won an Oscar for it. Can't really
he got
argue
an
with it.
Oscar, and I think that's how we know him. And um, he is just almost flawless in that role, and he's different than every other role he's ever done, and that's the commitment of him as an actor. Number three, I went just across the board, Equalizer. I absolutely love those films, and I thought that, I mean, you could have probably put like a Jason Statham or something in that role instead,
Sure.
but it just wouldn't have been as amazing because, like what we were talking about earlier, there's something about Denzel and his face and what he does in certain situations, that is very intimidating and heart-stopping. And whether you've hurt him or you've made him angry, you feel the same thing. And he does that throughout The Equalizer. I just love that role for him in all three of those films. Number two, Crimson Tide, for every reason we've talked about. And number one is the one that just propelled him into the stratosphere, which was Training Day. His performance in Training Day
Yeah.
was just groundbreaking. It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's a
For sure.
perfect list. Good Lord. Like, how do you beat that list, Drew? How do you do
Yeah.
it?
Well, I think I'm next technically, so I'll go
Paul, how do
next.
you beat that list? I mean,
Yeah, you know what? I left up a lot of films, like I already mentioned, that like even when I'm saying your list, I'm like, man, like, am I really leaving that movie off? But I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna stick what I have. My number five, and this is just one of my favorite performances, and this is maybe I thought maybe his most emotional performance, or at least the his performance that moved me the most. And it's probably not gonna be on a lot of people's lists, and I'm okay with that. But I'm not scared here, sitting here today, and I'm gonna be bold. I'm going with John Q. And a lot of people don't,
what?
but like when he's got the gun in his mouth,
Five?
kill me. Yeah, I just honestly, that was I don't. He doesn't necessarily make me emotional, but it was the one film where I actually like kind of got emotional with his performance, and just the way he battled for his son. That whole movie, it was just a different. We really hadn't
And
seen this father figure of Denzel Washington, and so I guess for me, I just
and
I
that movie was sort of mimicked multiple times afterwards. Like
yeah,
we've seen that scenario multiple times
yeah.
afterwards.
Yeah, but this is like the first one that really attacked like healthcare and like and it was just it was a really good role. Like he was really a down on his luck. Like, this is maybe the poorest he's ever been in a movie.
Wait,
Like,
is hold on a second. Is there a problem with our healthcare system? Tell me.
no, no,
I
no.
had no, I had no idea.
Yeah. My next film, and this one I could probably replace with The Equalizer, but to me, this is the beginning of The Equalizer, and it's Man on Fire. This is also Tony Scott, Tim. I believe it's Dakota Fanning is the is
Yeah, that's
is
good.
the girl. But again, it's just it's this badass that has this sensitive side, and it's this kind of it's really the first time that really we had that kind of character because we're
And
we're coming
an
off the 90s.
intelligence. There
Yeah,
was an
and intelligent.
intelligence in
Yeah,
that character, and that was just you couldn't trick him, and
yeah.
he's such a powerful presence.
Because
Wow.
we're
Yeah.
coming off the '90s action films of Stallone and Schwarzenegger and even Van Damme, where it's it's just all brute muscle. We're just gonna kick the shit out of everybody. But this one, it was like you're saying, it's more thought provoking. It's more emotional and yeah, it was
And badass.
and it really kind of propelled him into this action character, which he really wasn't an action star yet. So that's why I like that film. My three, of course, Crimson Tide. It's probably my favorite role of him, even though it's my number three. I'm sorry, favorite movie of him, even though it's number three. But I mean, it would be higher if it was just about his performances. I'm sorry, if it was just about the movie. But I like his other two performances that I have for two and three or two and one, just because I'll tell you what. My number two, go. What are you gonna say? Something?
No, I'm just listening to your explanations. It's like
Amazing. My number two is He Got Game. And in He Got Game,
what?
it was such a again another different role
Two?
for him. Yeah, I because he changed the outcome of that film. And I've obviously done a lot of research in this film, but this was him going against Ray Allen, and the script had Ray Allen just kicking the shit out of him. And Denzel Washington being Denzel Washington was like, F that. No, fuck it. We're gonna play ball. We're gonna play. Like whatever the outcome is, we're gonna play. And Spike Lee was like, all right, go ahead and play. And so that's actually them playing basketball. Like it wasn't acting at that point. It was just two guys playing ball. But again, just having the balls to want to compete against Ray Allen, who was a high level draft pick NBA player at that time. He was a rookie, I think, or second year player. But uh,
Who
and then
crushed,
and
by
then
the
there's
way?
just a lot of
Ray
great,
Allen crushed that role.
yeah, and there's just a lot of great scenes with him because he's a deadbeat dad. Again, it's a different kind of character that he is in a lot of these other ones. He's not the hero in this film. He's
Yeah,
really
but that's a five at best.
he's the anti in
Two?
this film, huh?
Yeah,
No, well, I'm saying the performance. The performance is really good.
two.
Yeah. And then my number one, I agree, Pete. It's Training Day. It's that was obviously he won the Oscar for it, so it's not like we're you know revolutionizing what's happening here. But he's Rafael Perez in the Rampart scandals, which I didn't know at the time, but now knowing a lot of the back deals, like that's who he was and was trying to portray and crushed it. So, Drew, what do you got?
Those are good lists. Number five for
Thank
me,
you.
neither of you mentioned, and it's probably one of his lesser known ones, but Hurricane, which
Yeah, he was
is
great in that.
Yeah.
an excellent Bob
He got
Dylan.
nominated for that, right?
He did an
Yeah,
excellent Bob Dylan song from the '70s, about
Hey,
a
man, here.
a misaccused, for lack of a better phrase, former boxer Reuben Carter, and he gives a great performance in it, and it's an awesome story.
excellent performance. Yeah.
The Reuben
Uh,
Cannon.
There
And
was,
the
I remember there
Hurricane.
was actually a lot of uproar that he didn't win. I forgot who won that year, but I'll actually do the research while you keep talking.
Do the research,
it's
yeah. Probably Forrest Gump.
he's so thoughtful, and anyway, it's just a great performance. I love that movie.
That is a great film.
Number four is Devil in a Blue Dress, kind of a noir.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I wanted to choose one that
Oh.
was
Hmm.
a little bit different.
You
Uh,
love some noir.
what I do love noir.
You
Uh,
do love that.
and his, the take on it with him, I thought that movie was really well done. And I can't believe how old it is now.
Yeah,
Number
right?
three, I'm surprised that neither of you mentioned this, only in the sense that I think it's one of his most tortured performances, and I think he just knocks it out of the park. Flight. Um,
That's the one that was probably my number six. I had that at number
Yeah.
four, and I
Yeah.
replaced it with Man on Fire.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's
I
just a
wanted to include that one.
man
I was
battling his.
gonna put it, but then there was five other ones that are clearly better.
I don't think I agree. I think again, it's a I don't know. There's a major focus on him It's smaller cast, and he carries the film, and he does it in a way that is just heartbreaking and emotional and inspiring at the end. So, Flight for me, number three. Number two, Malcolm X, Spike Lee joint.
Yeah.
A incredible story about an unbelievable person in history.
I want to
And
rewatch that one. I don't think I've seen that one in a good 30
And
years.
I mean, the performance is uncanny. It's
he is Malcolm. Like, you
Yeah.
forget what Malcolm X looks like because you picture Denzel Washington,
Yeah, for
because
sure.
he inhabits that man who is so profoundly important in American history, and
Yeah,
Denzel like walks into his ghosts and plays him to perfection.
for
Um,
sure.
Yeah, he really
so,
did. He crushed that role and exceeded expectations for
for
sure.
sure. So yeah, it's like, how do you is this is can you possibly live up to this? And he not only did, he did unbelievably well. And I have the same one as you guys. Training Day just grabs you by the throat, and his performance in it the entire time is, you can't take your eyes off him.
Yeah, the Malcolm X role, like I really wanted Will Smith's Ali to be what Denzel's Malcolm was. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
like what
And Will
Denzel
Smith was
did,
pretty good in Ali.
no, he was real good as Ali, but I don't know, like Denzel did something with Malcolm that it just he almost like Val Kilmer did with Jim Morrison. Like he just
Yeah, yeah.
transformed into that role and became that person and he became that message and he became that I'm going to use the word hope. You know
I
what I mean?
think
Like he
the,
he
the
just
only
did something amazing with that role. Like
yeah, I agree.
I was gonna say the same thing. Like, um, oh my God, what's his name? The guy that played Morgan Freeman. Like, when he's doing oh, I am so tired, guys. I'm
You know what I
sorry.
mean?
The president of South Africa.
Oh,
Um,
Mandela.
Mandela. Like,
Invictus
it's still
Yeah.
it's still Morgan Freeman. Will Smith, when he's doing Ollie, he did a great job. It's still Will Smith most of the time.
It's because they're
What-
too big. They're too big when they did the role
But
versus
when
Denzel
it's
Washington wasn't huge.
Denzel is Malcolm X.
Correct.
yeah, he
Yeah,
he
yeah, I
really
agree
did
with
well.
that. And but going to Pete's other example too, with Jim, like Val Kilmer
Agreed.
wasn't so huge where you couldn't get your mind off it. Like Will Smith was already the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and he's always going to be the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
And
Now
he'd
he'll
he'd
be
already
in other
done
movies, but
Independence Day. He'd already done all these huge blockbusters,
yeah, and
and
Oh,
then
for
he
sure.
already had
Men in
his
Black. Yeah.
yeah, like Will Smith was Will Smith. So I agree with you. His performance was amazing, but yeah, he'll never be Ali because but that's not his fault though. It's a detriment to his own success. You know what I mean? All right. I don't know if I should even ask this question, but Pete, who do you have voting for?
I like Drew's acknowledgement of Malcolm X, but I still think my list is perfect.
All right, Drew, what do you have?
I think because I put Malcolm X on there, I don't know how you have this list without Malcolm
I
X.
agree. I'm changing my vote to
Yeah,
Drew for
I was
sure.
gonna vote for Drew anyway, only because you know, Drew actually was smart on his list because he had three of his Oscar nominated performances, and I only had one of his, and Pete only had two of his. So we'll
And
All
for
right.
the
we'll
record,
give Drew the point on that.
we left off so many great ones.
Oh
Fencer,
yeah,
Oh, please.
I mean,
Fencer.
Philadelphia? Nobody even mentioned
Philadelphia,
I
Philadelphia.
yeah.
know. I think because
American
it
Gangster was
hasn't aged. I
amazing.
love
Safe
American
House. I
Gangster.
loved him in Safe House, Magnificent Seven.
So many good ones.
Remember the Titans? He's amazing. In Remember the Titans.
It
That
was
was a hard one to leave him off because I love that film and I love
Paul.
him.
Paul, for the record, I know Pete didn't like it as much. It was hard for me to leave He Got Game off the list. That
Oh,
movie, and he was
dude,
great.
I'm telling you,
Wasn't that hard for me to leave that off the list.
awesome. Next, we have, and the Oscar goes to. I am super curious to see where we go with this one. This was maybe one of the tougher ones that we've done so far in my head.
So hard.
I actually have multiple answers as of right now. I don't know what I'm going to pick,
Well,
but
you're first, so
oh, I am. Oh shit. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Uh,
and I already know you're gonna take mine, so go ahead, say it.
I'm going to stick to my original. I kind of said in the beginning, but because I have such a background in editing, I'm going to go with Chris Levinson for the editor. And again, I studied this in college. We literally
Talking
watched
about
this movie.
Oscar nominated choices.
Was he nominated?
I think so.
I forgot to look at all the nominations, but oh, normally I wrote that in my notes. I'm sorry. I messed up on that one. But the reason why I picked this is again, like this movie obviously has some great lines, but for most of this film, it's a lot of reactions and it's cutting here, it's cutting there, it's cutting there, it's cutting there, and it says so much. And there's so many times, especially like when the mutiny is happening, there's no word said, but it's everybody just like Denzel's looks at people when he's like, basically his eyes are saying, "You motherfucker." And the like Weps when Weps he just looks, he can't look at his eyes. And Zimmer, even Zimmer was all hard a minute ago in the other room, and then he comes in and Denzel gives him that look like, "You motherfucker."
You
And
better get the fuck out of my
and
face.
and they all cower. And it just goes again, it just shows the power of this film in general, but and also just this debate that they're having of who's right and who's wrong. And obviously the ship was pretty split in terms of right or wrong. Ultimately, I think the protocol kind of wins over the argument for most of the argument, but yeah, it's just such an intense way they edited. And obviously, to me, editing is you can't do editing without the score as well. I'm not saying I'm not stealing Hans Zimmer as well, but I just know how much a score plays a big role. But again, the editing I think sets the precedent for all these other elements, and it really stands out. And I see why my teacher used this as such a great tool of editing because he really this movie just emphasizes reaction over somebody saying a line or you know kind of like rhythm cutting or whatever. It's about seeing what other people's reaction are and having that tell the story because that's all that helps you trying to feel what you're supposed to feel. So cutting from here to here to here, it also gives you like, wait, am I supposed to feel like him? Am I supposed to feel like him? And yeah, it's just a masterfully edited film. It might be one of the best edited films of all time. So that's gonna be my answer. Drew, what do you got? I don't know what
Like
that noise was, but oh, I see.
like like you said, there's a lot of different ones to choose from, and when I say what I'm going to say, I'm going to immediately regret not saying another choice. But I'm actually going to go with Victoria Thomas and the casting
You
directing,
say the cat, yeah, that was
es-
one of my other ones.
especially after looking at some of the alternative choices
You should have picked the other one.
that I know that we're going to discuss in a minute. Because looking at some of the big and maybe bigger names they were chasing, and ending up for whatever reason, whether some of them turned it down or they chose to go in another direction, they ended up picking in what is my opinion maybe a perfect cast,
Yeah.
almost from top to
Pretty,
bottom,
pretty darn good.
with very few, like a lot of times there's somebody that sticks out like a sore thumb. I'm like, in this film, there's maybe one, maybe two people where I'm like, I maybe could have gone with someone different, but they're small enough role that it would have just been kind of another character
Like
actor.
who? Like who are you talking about?
Like, didn't matter.
The
It,
wife of Denzel Washington, you were in a bit like,
I'll look
The
up his
kid,
name, but
Denzel's
anyway,
kid
yeah,
in
my
this
point is
movie,
Denzel's
he
kid
was
at the
so
party didn't really bring it for you, or
yeah.
what?
my
The
point
magician
is
at the party just I needed more from him,
they picked a perfect cast from top to bottom,
except the
um,
magician.
So
and
Right.
and watching them all work together, a Gandolfini before he's gigantic, but like you guys said, coming off of True Romance, a very young, up and coming Viggo Mortensen, who I thought did a really good job in a very different role for him, just as a smaller bit player. I don't even remember the guy's name, the guy that's tasked with fixing the radio. I
Oh,
love
he's
that
so good.
Bossler.
and he does such a great job in this movie.
Yeah.
Love
He
that
he
You
was
guy.
he's
felt
in the
you,
he's in the Rock too, and
you
Yeah,
felt every moment of his pain
yeah,
in that moment.
he's
I
so
love
great.
when he hangs up on Denzel. Like I've been in that moment too, where like you're asking me questions. It's like I have to spend more energy trying to answer your questions versus like let me just work on this, dude.
Yeah. So, for me, casting directing, they cast a perfect group.
Yeah, for sure. Pete, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, this is so stupid being third in this category. Like I hate it. I hate being third in this category because editing was the
Cry about
best
it.
thing.
You can cry
Editing
about
was the best thing because, the brilliance of this movie is that it it's so fast paced, but it recognizes when you have to stop for a moment
Take a breath.
and really kind of focus on something that's kind of happening. So you really do this sort of roller coaster. Like when you go swooping through a roller coaster, but then you have that little thing where you have to kind of slowly go around a corner and then it starts in again. Like this movie really defines that word, roller coaster. Um, it just keeps you going, and it recognizes that you don't need fluff. We don't need it in these scenes. Let's just keep moving forward. Oh, shoot, we need something right here. Let's hold. And then they just hold and they just grip you as an audience member. And you go along for that ride. Actually, I'm gonna stick with editor because I just think it's amazing. I was good, you could also make an argument like nowadays they always like try to put two actors in a best actor category, and you could make an argument that you could do that with Denzel and Hackman, but the editing of this film is you can't top this film. It's
it.
brilliantly done.
I'm looking at the editing that year. It's Apollo 13, Babe. Braveheart, though. Braveheart, I mean, Braveheart's really well edited. Crimson Tide, Chris Levinson, and Seven.
Babe?
Babe, yeah, the pig. Or or to be Babe, the Babe Ruth movie.
No, it'd be Babe the Pig, I think.
No, it
I
would
think
be
it's Babe
Babe
the
the
Pig,
Pig
right?
movie.
Probably
Yeah.
because of like the combination of like computer generate like
But Apollo 13 and Braveheart, I mean, th those are three very well edited.
Murderer's Row.
Yeah. I still think Chris Levinson probably should have won over Apollo 13, but Apollo 13, I mean, I can't argue, but I can. Apollo 13 is really
Yeah,
well.
I could make an argument that this is better.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, continue, Pete.
No, I'm done. I went editor, even though you already did it. I think that, to be honest, I think you should get the point just because you came up with it. You said it first.
All right. Drew, what do you
Editing is the best.
I agree, Paul.
got? All right. I like this.
Wow. Our democracy is really
Yeah,
going smoothly
it's
here.
going way smooth. All right. So
If
Pete
if
actually still has
only
the
if
lead.
only our country could learn from this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. We'd do so much.
See
So
how we
Pete,
all work together.
Pete's up
Imagine that.
two because he voted for himself. Drew has one, and I also have one. So good job, Pete. So next, we're gonna do Get Me the RE Gold Award for different castings. I'm gonna go ahead and read off a few of the casting notes, and then we'll each decide our different pair that we have. The first one is Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer originally offered Val Kilmer one of the headlining roles, but he declined. We would have to assume that that's going to be Hunter because he's way too young to be Ramsey. Years later, Kilmer noted that was one of the few films that he wished he had agreed to be in. The role offered to Kilmer by Simpson and Bruckheimer was never formally specified. Al Pacino was originally offered the role of Captain Ramsey. Warren
That would have
Beatty.
been ridiculous.
He would have ruined the movie.
He would have ruined it.
Pete, can we
No
get an Al
offense.
Pacino? Can we get an Al Pacino Crimson Tide quote?
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Are you an Al Pacino hater too?
No, I love Al Pacino,
Oh,
but you would not put Al Pacino in this role. That would
I
be
like him
ridiculous.
I like him in about 3 or 4 roles, and everything else.
he's
Dude,
not.
Bill
He's not in
Bill
the Navy. Like, I
Hader
would never. I don't buy that he'd be in the Navy. Like,
he eats
Bill
the
Hader
room.
does the best
yeah,
impression of Al Pacino, but he
yeah.
always talks about how Al Pacino just reacts to like peripherals and stuff like that. So he would just be in a submarine and be like, "Wow, look at that! Why? Oh my God. It just,
Burn them
the
both.
movie would have just, forget about best editor because Al
Yeah,
Pacino would have like just dragged this shit on
yeah.
forever.
Warren Beatty was also interested in the movie, and Don Simpson and Bruckheimer went through a long period trying to convince him to sign on before parties moved on.
I don't get
Tommy
that.
Lee
Shout out
Jones,
Victoria Thomas for coming to their senses
yeah.
for that.
Tommy Lee Jones passed in the part of Captain Ramsey. Brad Pitt expressed sincere interest in playing Hunter during the period when Al Pacino was offered and considered the role of Ramsey. Pitt had long wanted to work opposite Pacino, who was considered a master actor. However, once it was clear Pacino would not be taking the role, Pitt withdrew his interest. Andy Garcia was one of the early choices for the role of Hunter, and Tom Cruise was also considered for the role. John Voight also for the role of Ramsey. So, Drew, we're back up to you. Obviously, we know Denzel and Hackman are probably the best choice out of all these. They are the best choice out of all these. What would be your second ideal pairing out of all the names that I just gave you?
I'm gonna get to it in a second. I have to give Hackman a shout out real quick because I haven't done it yet. I
Okay,
talk
go
about
ahead.
him on our podcast a lot. He is phenomenal in this movie, and there's something about the way he like. It almost seems like he's not acting in so many of his movies, even though the roles are somewhat different. Like he is so genuine and it comes so easy to him and across to the viewer. Naturally, it almost feels like he's never acting. Like I
Yeah.
love him so much and he's so great in this movie. So I just needed to shout him out before we got into like thinking about some
Shout it
alternatives.
out.
Yeah, for sure.
Dude, Gene Hackman is like I talked about Denzel earlier, but Gene Hackman is absolutely
He
phenomenal in this
he's
movie.
a simple son of a bitch, and I think that's what makes him work. And then you believe that he's in the Navy. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
Gene Hackman, I mean, from Hoosiers to some of his other films, like you believe that he can abide by the laws and the rules that the Navy.
He commands a room.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're all agreeing Pacino, like Pacino's the opposite of that. Like Pacino's going to do whatever the hell he
But
wants. Like,
he also understands that there's rules, but he still does those rules on his own terms. Like,
yeah, for
and
sure.
you're not gonna modify those rules because of what society says. I'm doing the rules. I'm
Yeah,
supposed to launch. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And he'll say
He's
go
so
fuck
great.
yourself. Yeah.
And he'll
Hey,
say it.
Gene Hackman, you're the best. All right. So who would I of that group
He's
of
still alive, by the way.
he's still alive, but he's retired. He's like in his 90s, I want to say, at least 80s. He's
Yeah, he's old.
pretty old, but it's too
I don't
bad.
think he's 90s, but yeah, he's retired.
Yeah, I don't think he's done a movie in like 10 years. So that list is
He is 94.
a no. Oh wow, a
He's
no go for
he's
me.
born 2 days before me. Fun fact.
Not the year,
He was
obviously.
born in 1930, though.
That's
Yeah.
old. 94. Wow. I don't like
So
almost
yeah, it's okay that
anyone.
he's retired, by the way. You guys
Almost,
give him a hard
I
time.
guess
Like,
he can take his time off. If I had to choose people from that list, I'm gonna go with Tommy Lee Jones, um, in Gene Hackman's role, and because I think he can do similar to what Gene Hackman can do and we've seen him commanding people, we've seen him giving directions, and he does a really good job of both following rules but also making his own rules. So Tommy Lee Jones would be for me, and then the second one, this was hard. Like I want to say Brad Pitt because I love him, but I don't see it. I would go Val Kilmer. I feel like he can do a similar look to what Denzel does in terms of his deadpan, and the things that he says when he's not actually saying anything. I think for Hunter, I would go Val Kilmer out of that group, but I would have probably gone out and chosen other people that were not on that list.
well, give me your
Tommy
Ramsey,
Lee Tommy Lee
Emily
Jones.
Jones. So you got Jones and Kilmer. Who do you got, Pete?
Yeah, Jones is a lock for anybody else who is done. And but I actually would have gone Brad Pitt because you've seen Brad Pitt. Um, I think at this time he probably did A River Runs Through It.
Yeah, I think I did.
But then you just saw and you hated him because he was so cute, right? And so gorgeous and hot and whatever. But then he just started to put out movies and movies, and he's done it his entirety of his career. This guy can do any role and crush.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would go Tommy Lee Jones for everything that Drew said, but I would have made it Brad Pitt because I know that if he was thrown into that role, he would have delivered probably at 98% of what Denzel gave us.
I'm just
Yeah.
not sure he was there yet.
I agree. I don't think he was there.
Mm, yeah, but everyone thought that with every role that he ever did. Oh, there's no way Brad Pitt can do this. And meanwhile, because they judged him based on his looks, but meanwhile, there's never been a role
I,
that he hasn't crushed.
I hear you, and I hear what you're saying
Name
about.
it.
I hear what
Name
you're
a
saying.
role that he's never crushed.
Meet Joe Black.
Well, that
He
just is
crushed
it's just a bad
that
movie.
role.
I don't disagree, but Seven wasn't that much longer after this, and I feel like Seven is for me when he grew up.
Yeah.
Well,
I,
maybe he would have,
Again,
if
I
given
think
the
a big part of
opportunity, he could
Possible.
have grown up with this movie instead
but
of
a
Seven.
big part of the
True.
role is again like it's the military. This isn't just a role. You also have to act like you've been in the military before. You know what I mean? So that's why I think Kilmer has an edge. But and I also go to my edge, which I would go Tom Cruise, Tommy Lee Jones. I mean that I'm going full on blockbuster with this, but Tom Tom Cruise already shows he has that he has that bark and the bite. He's already shown he can be military. He's done Fugue and Men. He's done Top Gun, and then of course Tommy Lee Jones did The Fugitive, and he was excellent in that. And then Tommy Lee Jones has done westerns. He's done so he fits that. I mean, I think we all picked Tommy Lee Jones, so I don't think I need to say my point on Tommy Lee
I
Jones.
wouldn't choose Tom Cruise only because of the reasons that we were just talking about Will Smith. He's already too big. Like I don't know. I think he was already too big.
Yeah, we should probably go Brad Pitt, probably.
All right, well, I'm gonna vote Drew because I think Val Kilmer was my number two over. I agree. I just don't buy Brad Pitt in the military. Like I just don't.
Okay, that's fine.
And he's
Give
never
him
done a
sure.
military role besides Spy Game. That was like the closest.
Yeah, and that wasn't a military at all. That was agency.
Right, exactly. You're proving the
But
point. So thank you.
no, I didn't prove at any point. You throw him in any role and he dominates.
Except he's never done a military role, so I don't know if I can
So
believe him.
what? But if you threw him in him, if he dominates every other role he's ever been thrown at him, why wouldn't he not throw, why
Maybe.
wouldn't he not crush a military
I'd
role?
rather take a proven commodity like Val Kilmer or Tom Cruise over it. Anyways,
I
you're not
mean,
gonna change my
I
opinion.
mean,
Drew, who
proven
do you got?
commodity. I mean,
I'm gonna
he
take
did
my
Top Gun.
I'm gonna take my list on this one. I don't think Brad
Yeah,
Pitt.
go ahead, Drew. You got it.
I will
And
say this though, Brad Pitt did do military. Lieutenant Aldo Rain, anybody?
on what? What movie?
Inglorious Bastards.
Oh, yeah.
Man.
See, in your
That was
face,
like a spoof.
Paul.
That was like a spoof.
Face.
All right,
Lieutenant
so we
Aldo
have a tie
Rain.
score. We have Drew two, Pete two. I'm at one, and
That
now
role is so amazing.
So good.
It's so good.
God, we should do Inglorious Bastards.
We should do Inglorious Bastards. It's so good. And
next we are going to. It's not your fault. Most powerful scene that gets you emotional or sad.
mm,
So Pete,
I'm
you're up.
I'm emotional and sad because of that last list. Um, okay. I have one. Okay, I'm gonna go with the other one, and we've talked about it before. The the build up to this scene with these two characters specifically, which is Denzel and Viggo. Um, when Gene Hackman gets his ship back and
Yeah.
Tony Soprano tries to grab Denzel, and Denzel just slaps his hand away, like, get your fucking hands off me, right?
That's
And
so
then
Yeah.
great.
and then as he's about to just walk away with, dignity, he's going to walk away. He just turns to Vigo and just gives them this look that is so powerful then. And Vigo can't even, for the life of him, look him in the eye. That was one of the more powerful scenes in
Me
this
too.
film. Not only the performances, but man, it was like it wasn't like in The Godfather when he's like, "You broke my heart," and he
Yeah.
kisses him full on the lips. Like that was you. That was this movie's "You Broke My Heart" scene. Like you just broke my heart. Like how dare you?
Well, and it's exacerbated by the fact that even Gene Hackman says we're not doing this without Weps. And I feel like one, that was a great setup, and then two, add in to like Denzel Washington, I feel like knows that too. And it's like basically you're the reason why this is even happening. And so again, it's set up with the birthday party with
Everything is set up in
the
this
terrible
movie. It's
clown that
beautifully
didn't do
done.
his job.
It's so good.
That was a shout out to Drew's.
I didn't even mention that. Like you
I know
guys
we were trying
made
to
that
figure
up
out
and
who
we're
you're
running
talking
with
about.
it.
Like there was not an actor. I'm like, oh, he did terrible.
I'm
Like,
looking up the actor. It's not that he did terrible. It's just maybe as he was too good and I wanted to
yeah.
punch him. I'm looking up
Who's
his
a
name.
kid?
No.
Um, yeah, I mean, I agree with Pete. That's probably the scene for me. I'm just gonna go a little bit on the obvious, only because again, I think it's also the scene I think that just has the gusto. But it's again, it's the Hans Zimmer score. It's when they get the EAM and they're reading at the end, and just the looks between everybody, everybody's just on edge and tense, and it's like, okay, we just went through some shit. Who's right? You know, who's right, who's wrong? And the way Denzel and Gene Hackman both played it, at the time, you still don't know what it is, but looking back, you can kind of see a little hints. But then again, the way everybody reacts, and then they play the Crimson Tide theme essentially, and it dun 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 dun, and it's just like you just get chills up your spine because like no matter all that bullshit, like at the end of the day, basically we still won the war, and it kind of just Pete talked about it earlier.
Yeah, we're a team again.
Yeah,
Yay.
basically at the end of the day, man, it's still US versus Russia, and we won. And even
Even
though
though we all wanted to kill
we
each
had
other.
beef, we still won at the end of the day. And I think again, that's also I think an important lesson. And again, I think just the emotions that song or the score brings, and yeah, and the elation that the crew has, it still gives me like I still had chills rewatching it. But again, Pete, I agree with Pete's scene, but yeah, this was my number two.
My scene is the very end when they're going through the sort of like that tribunal scene where they're standing in their dress whites before the panel and they're going to
Yeah.
find out their fates. And it's, the lead guy is kind of giving them both the right act about their behavior and this and that.
Jason
Uh,
Robards, by the way,
I know Jason Robards. I love
what a
him.
Comes
huge
in,
cameo
comes in and
steal that
crushes.
was.
I
Like,
just I love that. Yeah, that
yeah,
was great. So Robards is talking to them, and just the kind of the way it unfolds, like in my mind, I'm thinking the good old boys club is going to win out. Gene Hackman's kind of just looking somewhat self-satisfied. I agree with Peter that there is some implicit racism, I think, kind of throughout this film. And my worst, like the part of me that just doesn't want it to be true. I'm just worried that like Denzel's race is going to play a part in this, in kind of how they adjudicate it. And then he unfolds it and he's like, we're going to accept, or, Gene Hackman has made these recommendations and we're going to accept his retirement, his early retirement. And we're going to make sure that you're able to go, he also recommends that you have, your
Oh,
next leadership position as soon as possible. And you kind of, for me, it's just this sense of like relief that Gene Hackman is acknowledging that even though it was hard for any of us to understand who was right and wrong down there, it always kind of felt like Denzel was right. He obviously ends up being vindicated when the communications
yeah.
come back up. So it's not that Gene Hackman was
For the
horrible. he
They're
really
both
thought
right. They're both right and they're both
he
wrong.
really thought he was following his orders.
as
Um,
stated by Robards.
Yeah.
and exactly, but he acknowledges that the other guy got it right, and so he's going to step away, and it's his turn to step into the to his next leadership role. And for me, that just that scene gives me goosebumps every time,
Yeah.
to see that acknowledgement and the fact that they can walk away on decent terms,
Yeah,
like
for
because
sure.
they are both
It
serving
was a perfect ending.
they're both serving their country.
And that's also too why since 1996 the power to launch a nuclear weapon is no longer in the power of a nuclear
Yeah,
submarine commander. It's only with the president of the United States. And so,
yeah. It's crazy that that wasn't the case before,
It's
but
because of this movie. They
well,
changed
well,
policy.
well, did you know? No, yeah, it did. But the other part too, did you know this movie was based off of the Russians actually were the ones that dealt with this situation? Did you guys hear about that or no?
mm-mm.
So this is based off of a Cuban Missile Crisis situation with a Russian sub, and obviously communication was way different back then, but they had submerged and were going to basically to Cuba, and their last orders were basically to launch nuclear weapons. And while they were underneath, they basically stood down, like everybody else stood down. And so the captain wanted to launch the weapon because that was their last thing. And then ultimately the XO was like, no,
Vladimir Hackman wanted to
yeah. Ultimately,
launch.
ultimately the XO was like, no, like let's find out. Like we need to find out. They submerged and they realized they were surrounded by US destroyers, and ultimately that everybody stood down. And so it averted literally World War III. So it's crazy that that's still kind of based. That's why the U.S. Navy didn't want to be a part of this film because they're just like, yeah, we don't want to promote
We
a
don't want to
mutiny
admit
on a,
a bunch of stuff.
yeah, very
I give point Drew,
okay. I'm good with that. I was going to give you the point,
which,
but
which gives him the lead.
yeah, Drew three, Pete two, me one. I have a feeling I'm not going to
Thanks, guys.
win. Next, we have Ma the Meatloaf. Scene that makes you laugh or feel good, most likely feel good, but I believe is it me first?
You're first.
Yeah, okay. So for me, I thought this was to me easy. It's the scene behind me, but it's that initial scene again. The cadence, the way Gene Hackman, like the pride of the Alabama, like for me, it still gives me goosebumps. And again, the way it's shot, it's raining, it's pouring, the lighting, it's just such a perfectly shot scene that just sets the tone for the movie in terms of like its style and its directorial style, because again, this is Hans Zimmer's real first crack at the score. You hear the theme song, and it's one of the
Was this
greatest.
before or after Backdraft? Was it before?
I
uh
think this is after.
Yeah, because Backdraft was
oh, you're right.
amazing.
You're right. This was the second one.
Because Backdraft was like, what a great
Backdraft's
score.
amazing.
The
No,
Backdraft
of
is
course.
like one of the best scores
Yeah,
ever.
Backdraft was 91.
Yeah, no, this is after. But
You know what Backdraft's
he's
best score
still
is?
like that's one of the greatest scores of all time. But this Crimson Tide is also up there, like still one of my personal favorites. So I mean, I'm not backing down what I'm saying. Yes, he did Backdraft, but uh he
He
just
did Thriller. Oh,
yeah, Thriller.
Thriller.
But yeah, Hans Zimmer's score that just sets the tone again, like again the rapport between Cobb and Gene Hackman, like you said, you're fired up to get on the submarine, and you feel like this is the start of the movie, like let's go. And it's just again inspirational. I edited a ton of videos to the Crimson Tide theme. Like this was big for me, so that's gonna be my scene.
I chose the same scene, but it's
Really?
not just for the um, all of it, everything that you just mentioned, the rain. You start to learn what kind of a leader of men he is. How it's obviously the military, but how much very obviously Cobb sort of would follow him into the gates of hell. But the
Yeah.
other reason why I really like this scene is the levity that is introduced in it as well. And you see some of Gene Hackman's
Should have
uh,
joined the Air Force.
that line is great.
It's
And
great.
the other, if you feel something in your pants, it's my boot up your, so it's like
You'd follow him though. Like the way
100%.
his speech, you'd follow him, how well
He's
In
worded
the
it
same way
was.
you would follow William Wallace after that speech. Like it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, okay, I'm going. I'm going
a
with you no
a
matter
hundred
what.
100%. And it's like it's almost like Bear Bryant vibes at Alabama because then he goes into the Roll Tide. I mean, he's their lieutenant, but he's their coach. They would follow him because he's inspiring. He's also funny. He knows when to break tension. So I chose the scene too, but I chose it also for sort of what it reveals about Hackman's character and his relationship with his guys.
Yeah, for sure. Again, it sets the tone, like you're saying, because that's what makes the rest of this movie so interesting. Because it's not like he's a shitty leader, that no one respects him. Everybody is all aboard, to include Cobb, which makes it like out of you all people, Cobb.
Yeah.
Like again, it just sets up that juxtaposition so well. Yeah, it's a brilliant scene. Pete, what do you got? Good luck, Pete.
Yeah, no, I'm going with something that's actually funny, as opposed to, oh, this makes me feel good.
The clown scene.
Um,
Get the clown scene.
the clown scene
I'm
in
sorry,
this
the
movie is
magician scene. Magician.
the magician is so funny in this movie. No, the funniest thing is like, and it's a perfect ending to the movie when he, they've already divvied out the punishments, the results of the tribunal. Um, Denzel has a newfound respect because Gene Hackman actually recommended him and actually took a step back, and there was a clear acknowledgement of his wrongdoing in that scenario, even though he probably still on his deathbed thinks that he did the right thing. But then at the end, Denzel stops him at the very end, and he's like, Gene Hackman's like, "Look, you were right, and I was wrong about the Lippenzommers,
Yeah,
because they weren't from Portugal, they were from
they're
Spain.
from
Like
Spain.
he can't admit that he was wrong at all,
He
like
did.
on any
He did, but he
level.
didn't. Yeah.
He did, but then he was like about the Lippensigners, and it just brought a bit of
Right.
levity to the end,
Yeah.
which I thought was brilliant. It was a brilliantly written and performed ending to a movie.
This is one of the few
Fantastic.
films where you're so thoroughly
What,
satisfied with how
Peter?
to
I
end
think.
because you again, you have all this tension and you build up. It's so hard to pay off all of that. But this
It's a
movie does that.
beautiful ending.
It's perfect. It's a perfect ending because
So good.
you're literally satisfied by every account. And I don't know anybody that's ever said like, oh, except the ending sucks. Like I've never heard that before. I mean, this is one of the best endings of all time where it's like you literally are satisfied by everything because it ties everything together. And yeah, good job, Pete. What do you got, Drew? Or voting wise?
I am going to vote for Paul because it's the
What?
same scene that I chose, but I think your explanation was better.
Pete, what do you got?
Crazy. I got me. I think my it's the best.
I think you did good, but I'm gonna vote for me anyway, just to make it interesting.
All right, so 3 to 2 to
You
2.
did a really good job though. Honestly,
There's,
you did a really good
there's
job.
there's no reason why I didn't shouldn't
If
have
you
gotten that
didn't vote
point.
for yourself on the first one, then I might have given you that point. But
It's just so stupid.
I'm just trying to balance out your egregious act of voting for yourself twice.
Democracy and it's so stupid.
Yeah.
It's falling apart.
It's
Uh-oh.
falling apart right now. It's just
Well,
in front of our faces.
Sorry, America. You
we
can't
got a
vote.
good game so far. That's the whole point is we got a good matchup. Drew
The
3, Pete
big
2,
the
me 2.
beginning of this episode was 1776. We're like writing the declaration
Yeah.
and we're like all excited. And then now at this point it's like 1805 and we're like, what the fuck are we doing? Like this is like
We're about to go back to
really
war
not
with
going well.
yeah. All right, next we have line please. This is going to be a good category because there's so many great lines in this movie. I literally have like 7 lines that I wrote and I'm just going to play off whatever. But Oh, wait, who's first on this one now? I lost my track. Was this Drew?
I think me
Mm, yeah, I think Paul, you
first
went
last
Yeah,
time.
first.
I started the last one. So this is gonna be Drew. So we'll do best quote. So this is again, I know sometimes we struggle with this. There's underrated quote, guys. It's the least, kind of under the radar, and then there's best quote. This is the heavy hitter one. What do you think is the best quote in the whole movie?
Hmm.
Mine is more, I guess, sort of a political quote, but I mean, because everything about all of this is subjective, it always trips me out because I always feel like you think that I'm not choosing.
Yeah, I
I
don't
do
like this.
underrated versus like whatever. For
Yeah.
me, I think the best quote from this film is when they're kind of talking and really starting to like play chess with each other and get to know each other.
Yeah,
And he asks him, and Denzel says, "In my humble opinion, in the nuclear world, the true enemy is
yeah.
war itself."
That's a great answer, Drew. Good job. I think you finally figured out
No, but okay,
that is one of the best quotes in the whole movie, for sure. The true enemy is war itself.
right. Even though he's quoting somebody who wrote that line.
Sure, but it's really the premise of the movie too.
Yeah,
Pete, what do you get?
I mean, I don't like this. I don't like splitting this category up. Like, I
Why?
think
It
there
gives
should
us,
just,
first of all, the whole point is to give us multiple quotes that we can talk about. Like that's kind of the point. But
yeah, I know. I mean, one of the best lines is, you've already said it, is we're here to preserve democracy, not to practice it. I
it's a
mean, we
great
just
one
saw the
too.
drill, and the guy died in the drill, and Denzel is starting to, in terms of the story, he's
Yeah,
starting to disagree and with Gene Hackman, but Gene Hackman is continuously sort of nipping him in the bud, right? Like
yeah,
he's constantly keeping him in check. Um, I mean, that statement was sort of the encapsulation of his mentality throughout the entire film. He's like, we're here to do a job,
yeah,
but don't think for 2 seconds that that means that you have an opinion. I'm the fucking captain of this ship. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
and that plays a pivotal role throughout. I mean, that's almost another character. That mentality is another
yeah,
character in this film. It's crazy.
yeah. That's a great quote. I had both those written down myself. I'm gonna go with my third quote then. I didn't know if I was gonna go underrated with this one or not. Again, there's a lot of great quotes in this movie, which is I do agree it does make it difficult, but I'm gonna go, Mr. Hunter. I've made a decision. I'm the captain of the boat. Now shut the fuck up. I just that was to me that was the equivalent of Kurt
Well, he
Russell.
broke. He finally broke.
Yeah, he definitely broke, but then it was the equivalent of Kurt Russell's. I told you to stand right, but fucking side me. Like it had that same kind of like
Tango and Cash.
yeah. It just
Oh
no
no, backdraft,
backdraft.
backdraft,
Yeah,
backdraft.
it had that same like again like when you use the F word so properly, like the right way, it's so powerful. And I felt like again he was even keeled the whole time, and then like Pete said, he finally broke, and you're just like, oh shit, like Denzel got to him. Like again, it's like watching a boxing fight, and
Yeah,
I just again I love that quote. I was maybe gonna go underrated with that one, but you guys took my other two, so fuck it. But yeah. So Drew, who do you vote?
I think Pete's is probably
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with him.
the most important quote.
You're such a fucking homer, Pete. Like
I
you
think
don't
I, I
you
think
haven't voted
I
by the
think
way, I
Mike.
don't think you voted for anybody else yet in this
That's not true. I voted for Drew several times.
once, I think. All right. So we have Drew three, Pete three, me two, and then now we're
Oh,
gonna
you had the best delivery though.
Yes.
Honorable mention.
I thought
There
I
you
nailed
go.
it with performance, but I guess we're not judging on Pete, we're gonna go now underrated quote. What do you got?
Um, I'm gonna pick the quote that set the tone for this film from the get-go. Um, where they're doing the interview and it's like, your name was at the top of the list. And he's like, oh my God, thanks, Andy. He's like, Very short list. It was a short list. You know what I mean? Like he's like, let me build you up and then break you down
But you know
like
what though? Like,
immediately.
but you know what though? Like, I totally recall that line, and I agree with you. It's a great line. But the more I think about it, I'm like, that's actually still a compliment though. Like, I know he was trying to dig him, but
Yes, but he was trying to dig him. He was setting a tone.
no. I agree with that part. But my point is, it's actually not a dig because the fact that you're still at the top of a short list just
You're
means
still
that
the
that's
top.
how great you are. Like we're only considering three people, but you're the top of that list, as opposed to if we had 100 candidates, you're the top of that list. Like to me, it shows like how much above you were everybody else. I don't know. I know it was supposed to be a dig. I actually didn't take it, but I love that line though. I agree with you. It was a
Yeah,
good.
it's a good line. Thank you.
So for me, I'm gonna go. Um, God help, God help us if you're wrong. If I'm wrong, then we're at war. God help us all. I just thought again, like
That's a great line.
it just kind of encapsulated Denzel Washington's point of view and also just his demeanor of
But it also,
it's not about me. I'm just trying to solve the truth and I'm
yeah,
searching the truth.
exactly. It showed that Denzel, even though he was strong in his convictions, that
Yeah.
he was willing to understand the other side of it and agree to it
Yeah.
and acknowledge it.
Yeah.
That was a great line.
Yeah. It was always
All
about
right,
the truth.
Drew,
It was never about his ego. Like to
if
me,
you choose to fill,
Gene Hackman kind of got into his ego a little bit. Denzel Washington always stood still on this isn't about me. This is about the truth. We need to find out the truth. And that's where I always sided with Denzel more than Gene Hackman. But go ahead, Drew.
So after the fire in the galley, and they go back to and they like disagreed about whether or not they should have done the drill. They go back to Gene Hackman's quarters, and he's kind of explaining his rationale. We've kind of talked nibbled around the edges of this a lot, and kind of putting Denzel sort of back in his place as his second in
Yeah.
command, and like all
and
that.
as a black man, go on.
Well, unfortunately, there may have been something to that.
Yes.
But then when he says, and it kind of, so he just like is basically dismissing him, and he goes, short of an outbreak of World War III, the ship sinking, or being attacked by a giant octopus, I'd like to be undisturbed for the next 30 minutes. And then Denzel's like, okay, I guess he's the boss, and like has to leave
Yeah.
and agrees to that. So I just thought it was funny, and also like it was him basically taking complete command back while also doing it in a funny
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who started this one? Pete?
I think, I think, I think I'd give it to Paul, if I'm going to be honest.
I'm good with that.
All right. I'll give you the point. So hey, guys, we got a three three
We got a
three.
three-way tie
I
right
love
now.
it. I love it. Hey, our democracy's working today. We've got
We're in
four
harmony.
we've got 4 points left. So this is good. Next category, great shot, your favorite shot in the film. Also, we'll have an underrated one after this, but this is the number one shot, best shot of the film. And who started the last one? Pete?
I think Drew started the last one, no?
Pete started. I started best line. You started underrated. I think. I think this is Paul.
Yeah, I think it's me too.
Okay, Paul, go ahead.
So my favorite shot, and it's I mean, it's already my background, but the shot where Wepps is in the right-hand corner and an out of focus Gene Hackman's on the back. But again, you got the rain pouring, you got
Webster Cobb.
Cobb, I'm sorry, Cobb. You have Cobb on the right, you have Gene Hackman to the left. Now, this is a hybrid shot. This is not the
Yeah,
actual.
yeah, yeah.
I couldn't find the pure shot, but I just again I love the framing of the shot and again just the harmony that the shot bring and obviously because there's a lot of tight quarters in this film. There's not a lot of like crazy cinematic genius in terms of cinematography, but I just love this composition where Cobb on the right, Hackman on the left. But again, Hackman's out of focus too, which I like. Again, it was a little artsy, but at the same time, very effective. They mixed it in with the close-ups and all that stuff. But I just it stood out immediately when I rewatched this film, and I'm just like, that's just such a masterful shot. And they didn't hold on it too long. They didn't overplay it. But again, I think they also showed the importance of Cobb in the shot because again, he's going to play such a key role later. And again, he's the main one in this frame, and Hackman's in the back, and he really is that pivotal guy at one point. And so
Yeah, I mean, you had to
I think I
establish
think it has a
his
little bit of
loyalty.
foreshadowing, yeah. And then the loyalty thing, yeah.
You had
I
to
think the
establish
shot
his
also,
loyalty because of what was going to happen soon. So it was
yeah.
brilliantly done.
Yeah, but it's also just a beautiful looking shot too. So whenever you can combine meaning with pure art and beautiful cinematography, like I'm always a big fan of that. So I thought this shot was the best looking shot as well as has significance to it in the whole movie. Drew, what do you got?
I have the shot behind me. That scene when
Great
they're
shot.
just about to dive down in the submarine and they're kind of up top. It's kind of the two of them. I know I'm supposed to only talk about the shot, but like setting the entire stage, it's like the most
No,
relaxed,
no, no, for sure.
the most relaxed that they kind of ever are with each other and or in the movie in general. It's kind of like literally like sort of like the calm before the storm. They have the scar, they're breathing in the air. The
And
shot
there's
is
a moment of respect.
totally a complete moment of respect that there's like we're about to go and do this thing. It's about to get the rest of the movie is going to become incredibly claustrophobic as
Yeah,
they're below decks and under the water. And it's just like this beautiful shot, sun setting, they're out there, the ocean, the entire world is sort of in front of them, and then they're about to just be entombed in this thing as they go down into the drama. I just think that it's a gorgeous shot.
yeah. And even going back to your metaphor, they're about to dive into the drama, right? Like
Yeah.
again, it's super metaphorical. And again, it's also classic Tony Scott. It's that dusk looking shot. It's red. It's got the red hue, the orange hue
Which I
to it.
love.
Uh,
You show me that shot in any movie,
yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, it's my favorite
And the cool thing
every
too,
time.
let me add to it just because this is also in my other notes. But
Hmm.
you know, I told you before they didn't necessarily have like full permission of the Navy to like not like they did with Top Gun, but this one they had permission to shoot, but then the commander was like, "All right, well we're about to dive, so like cut the camera type thing," and so all that is like real submarine diving, of course, like it's not a set, and that's actually what Tony Scott wanted the whole time was like, yeah, that's please dive. Like that's all like that's literally the shot I need. So
Yeah.
obviously they shot that separately, but then when you see the full submarine go, like that was all basically quote unquote stolen footage. And
Mm.
even though it's legal because it was in a public view, but they didn't quote unquote get permission for that. So it was awesome. I love that kind of filmmaking because that's just that's
It's a
guerrilla
guerrilla
filmmaking and
filmmaking. Yeah.
yeah, that's and guerrilla filmmaking at the highest level. But this is not
Yeah.
a small movie. So yeah, I love that scene and all the shots there too. Pete, what do you got?
I'm gonna go with the one that you have behind yourself, Paul, but in a little bit of a different context because it was just something that it was different in the context of what we've seen so far in this film and what we will see ever again. Because we're about to get into, like Drew said, we're about to get into a very claustrophobic environment.
Yeah,
And they're all the sailors are lined up. It's heavy rain. You got the silhouette of Gene Hackman with his dog walking around the corner with his umbrella. And he ends up giving this great speech. And then eventually you see that two shot of Gene and Denzel standing next to each other. But then all of a sudden, out of the blue, they show that wide shot right behind you without that big guy's face, without Cobb's face right there. But you
yeah,
see this big wide shot, and you got the sparks perfectly timed coming
yeah,
down at the same time. It was a perfect shot because it gave you this sense of the scope of the film
yeah,
right before we're about to get real claustrophobic.
for
And
sure.
I loved that shot. And
Yeah,
it's like it's literally a 24 frame shot. Like it's just
yeah,
like It's like that.
yeah, for sure.
I love it.
Yeah.
My
No,
favorite. It's my favorite shot.
and the other aspect too is again just stylized and all that. But Tony Scott knows how to shoot rain very well. He makes it look realistic, but yet still stylized. And there's plenty of people that shoot rain different ways, but I'll take Tony Scott's way of shooting rain. Or it's really kind of a Bruckheimer thing because Michael Bay also in other Bruckheimer films like kind of takes off of it, but they just light it a certain way that just adds another element to it. So okay. Drew, who you voting for?
It's interesting. Like you guys both chose the same one.
You can also choose yourself too.
Um, yeah, I guess I'll choose mine. I don't
There
know.
you go, Drew.
Atta boy. Atta boy.
I really like
That's
this
what we're
shot.
talking about.
Pete, who do you got?
I'll give it to Paul
All right. You know what?
because
I'm gonna go tiebreaker.
yeah,
I'm gonna go with me as well. Only because I really like that shot. I do think it's the
I
best shot.
love I love that shot. It's
I think it's
brilliant.
an amazing shot. So I'll go with me as well. So I've taken the lead. Shockingly, I did not expect to be
With
taken
two
over by-
categories left.
we have two categories. No, we have three. So next we're gonna do underrated shot.
No, let's not do underrated shot.
No, because I have a great one. I want to talk about it.
All
Unless
right.
you guys don't want to do points for it, which I'm fine with, but I'll tell my shot.
Yeah, I don't really have an underrated shot,
Do you have an
except for the
underrated
one that's
shot, Drew?
behind me.
I have one that I was literally going to give away the point. I just wanted to make fun of a shot, but go ahead and
Go ahead
give
and
us
do yours, and I'll do mine. No
I
point in it.
think he must be in it at some other point, but at the point that I'm like, wait, that's Ryan Phillippe, and he's sitting there like making out with a fish tank.
Like
What on earth?
who has a fish
Oh,
tank
was that
What?
in a
him?
submarine?
What
Yeah,
on
that
earth is that
I didn't
shot?
realize that was him. I was trying to figure out who he was. I'm
Makes no sense. Like I don't have any recollection of him being introduced at any other point, and it's just him sad next to like staring longingly at these fish.
yeah,
And I'm like, what on earth is this?
yeah. So my underrated shot is at the end.
There's no way that the Navy would allow a
Oh
fish
yeah,
tank
Fish
in a
that's
submarine.
probably
There's
my
just no
director's
way.
chair. Now that
Yeah.
you say it, that's actually my director's chair. That was the only part I'm like, dude, there's no way they're bringing an aquarium to a regular private or whatever the seaman level. Yeah, no way.
Seaman.
So my favorite shot is at the end. And again, you can shoot this 12 different ways. And the way Tony Scott chose to shoot it, it's the shots on Weps, and you just see the back of his head, and he just turns and looks, and you just see like that half smile. And it's just again, you could have shot it 12 different ways, but I just loved how that was shot. And I could probably think of it more on a deeper level, but I just loved it stylistically and and again, maybe it's a relief, maybe it's again, you only get half a smile, so maybe it's only because he turned, he was a traitor before that, and so you only get half his smile. I don't know, but I just thought it was a brilliant way to shoot that because again, you could have done so many different ways. So that was my underrated one. So again, no points for that one. We're gonna jump into director's chair. I don't know if there's gonna be any points for this one, guys, unless somebody kind of wows us. But
Let's give it a shot. If we all agree this is silly.
yeah,
Um,
I'm almost down to just put it up for the
just make it the fish tank one.
no, the Tony Scott. Yeah, I mean the fish tank. That's really my
Fish
only.
Yeah,
tank
that's
is
the only that's why
uh,
it's so preposterous.
Yeah,
yeah. The fish tank was number one on my list, but number two on my list is after the scene that I absolutely love that Paul has behind him, like I just don't imagine a scenario where you have a bunch of seamen sitting around getting ready to go on a mission, and they're like, "All right, everyone on the sub," and everyone's like, "Yeah!" And they're like, everyone runs towards the submarine, and then as they're diving, like everyone's just running around, and
Uh,
there's just a
I'm
lot of
okay with that.
movement. Like,
Yeah, but you
there's
need
no
that
way.
because it's
But
gonna
they
be
don't do that
stale.
in real life.
I know.
Nobody's
I'm
hopping
okay.
about. Like,
I'll
but
put him.
fish tank is my vote.
Yeah, fish tank was mine, but
Fish tank is so
all right,
stupid.
well, we'll award no points. Let's just go winner take all Tony Scott directed movies. We'll just do
Hmm.
winner take all because I'm only up by 1 point, but honestly, I think we're all pretty even. So we'll do winner
Even
take all top
Steven.
five Tony Scott directed movies. Uh, this was not as challenging as Denzel Washington's, but because
No,
obviously,
this was easy.
rest in peace, Tony Scott. He was taken a little bit before his time. But he still had his top five is still, I'd put it on par with almost anybody in history. I mean, he is to me an all-time great director, and especially for me, maybe one of my most influential directors of all time, specifically because I think he is the Howard Hawks or the, you know, I
John
don't
Ford,
use
if you will.
what was it? Oh yeah, John
John
Ford.
Ford.
Yeah. And he didn't any westerns, but I would love to see a Tony Scott western. I mean, I feel like that's the one thing we were probably cheated on. Maybe he doesn't have because he's British. Maybe that's he just doesn't have that acumen. But I definitely feel like that would have been an awesome thing to see was a Tony Scott western. But who are we starting with on this one? Is it Drew? I think I
Uh,
started on the last the Great Shot. So yeah, it should be Drew.
okay. Um, man, I had a harder time with this than you guys did.
Okay.
I'm gonna go for my number five, Man on Fire.
Hmm.
I think that's an awesome film, also with Denzel. Um, just really, really, really solid. Number four, I imagine this may not be on your guys' list, but I put on Spy Game, which Robert Redford, who, if you haven't seen 3 Days with the Condor, like he's done espionage really well. Brad Pitt coming into his own. I really liked Spy Game.
Yeah.
Um, number
Who would have been a really good hunter, by the way?
Yeah. Can't get any
um,
points for that.
number three for me is Enemy of the State. Again, Gene Hackman is in that. Will Smith does a phenomenal job.
Gene Hackman's
Love
so good in that too.
so
I
good.
forgot some of the films that Gene Hackman did, and when I relooked at his thing, I would have loved to have done a list for Gene Hackman. We're only down to two categories now, so I don't regret the categories we have, but man, Gene Hackman has had a great career.
Yes. Um, Number two is Top Gun,
Yeah.
which obviously the zeitgeist, maybe the one of the biggest movies of the 1980s. So I probably don't need to say a whole lot about Top Gun. And then number one, I know that I'm going to lose because I didn't put Crimson Tide on here. I kind of just wanted to talk about other movies.
What?
Number, I
Yeah.
told you I knew I was going to
You
lose.
never
That's what
like putting the movie that we talk about on your list.
I try not. I try not to because I like to talk about other things because we spend the whole time talking about this movie.
Oh, I get it, but that's why it's
I
on the list.
I get it,
Yeah,
and I
it's a
acknowledge
great
that
way
I'm
to
gonna.
lose.
I acknowledge I'm gonna lose. I can live with it.
Yeah, literally just
Number one, for me, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. Um, and you sort of prefaced it earlier, talking about Quentin Tarantino coming in to write part of it. True Romance for me. Uh,
that's your number one.
yes, True
Wow.
Romance is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I think it's maybe Tony Scott's most nuanced in a lot of ways.
Well, good luck winning. Uh,
Okay.
very interesting list. You left off you left off some big hits there. But Pete, here you go. You've teed
Okay.
up nicely here.
All right.
Don't
This is a hanging curveball right over the plate that I could just kind of
yeah, don't foul it
just
off. Don't
just
foul it.
crush. Yeah, I don't. I'm not going to get overconfident with this one, but I agree. True Romance is phenomenal. Um, okay, my number five is near and dear to my heart. I feel like we've done this list before, and I feel like I'm giving the same speech that I've given in the past.
I don't
Number
think
five
so.
for me, number five for me is The Last Boy Scout, son. This movie was like one of my favorite movies growing up.
Yeah.
It was the most ridiculous movie. It was over the top. It was silly, but you got
And
an early sense
and
of
Bruce
a
Willis
Tony
was so
Scott.
scummy. Like he was
He's so
so scummy
scummy.
in this movie.
And Damon Wayans was so silly,
Yeah, he
but
was. But
the way that he shot this film, you could see his potential in what he did after The Last Boy Scout.
he was already a hit director when Lost Boys.
No, but he did some really, I mean, with the rain, we talked about the rain
Yeah,
earlier. You do a football scene in the rain, but then somebody pulls a gun
yeah,
out and blows a guy away.
yeah.
You can't write that, even though he did and shot it and made a movie of it. But whatever.
Right.
You don't understand what I'm saying.
I get your point.
Last Boy Scout is awesome. Number four, and I am total agreement with Drew. Spy Game is one of my favorite movies. It's another one of these movies that I just kind of put on and just kind of have in the background because Brad Pitt could have been Hunter in this film. I put True Romance at three because I respect this film and we could do a full episode on this movie and I could talk ad nauseum about True Romance and the brilliance of this film. Not only the performances, but the writing of it and the way it was. I would really, really want to see a Quentin Tarantino directed True Romance and not just the fact that he wrote it. Same with Natural Born Killers. If we're gonna go down
Yeah,
that route, like I would love to see those movies done in a Quentin Tarantino style, but that's just me.
I
Uh,
think he needed to.
well, he
I
needed
think Quentin
cash,
Tarantino
so he
needed
sold
to
them.
learn. Still, go well, he was still learning his style, but he learned a lot from Tony Scott. I mean, again, he was on set for this film, and then he was on, of course, on set for True Romance, and I think that helped him build his own identity. So
He so
I
he
think
had
it's
to
part of his growth.
unlearn what he had learned,
No, you build off it. Like you learn what you
according to
like and what you
Yoda.
don't like. Yeah,
Number two, I put Crimson Tide because it's awesome, but you can't top Top Gun. Top Gun's the best movie.
you can't top it.
You can't top it.
It is
It's
the
in the
top.
name. It's in the name. It's in the title.
Wow. Well, uh, I mean, the only thing I'm worried about is the fact that you two have such different lists, so you can easily vote me out here. But my number five is Man on Fire. I think, again, that's one of the best revenge movies that you're going to see. And that, again, it just kind of combines the action and the heart with style, which is, again, just kind of he started to do a bunch of movies like this, but Man on Fire to me was like that last great Tony Scott film. My number four, Enemy of the State, just a brilliant, brilliant film, brilliant script where again, all so many different things play out at the end. I mean, I just remember being in that film and just like, how in the world is he going to get out of this? Like the tech they got is like they're on him, and just such a great movie that still kind of holds up, by the way. And we'll definitely review that at some point. My number three, and I can't believe you guys didn't have this, Beverly's Cop 2. There's not too many sequels that can go pound to pound with the first one. And Beverly's Cop 2, I don't think it's better than the first one because the first one I think is way funnier, but the second one is just a better action film. And again, it's combining that humor with a masterful action director because the other guy, I forget his name, the original director of Beverly Cop, but Tony Scott took Beverly Hills Cop series to like another level in terms of like production, overall production design.
Yeah, but it just wasn't
It was
as
great.
received. It wasn't as received as the first one. That's the
I
only reason
mean,
why I left it off the list was that it was a great movie. I love Beverly Hills Cop 2. I
I think
love it.
it's a better movie. It's just not a better script. The first one's a better script. That's why I got
Yeah.
nominated. Like, but I think it's a better movie because the director's better. Like Tony Scott, like again, the way it's shot, you know, Bogomil gets gunned down. Like, I mean, it's excellent film. And then the Alphabet Murders, like it was a great concept. It's a great film.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
my number two, Crimson Tide. I think we're all in agreement with that one. And then yeah, number one, Top Gun. I mean that.
Well, except Drew, who doesn't have it on his list at
We
all.
have basically the exact same list, except for I don't have Crimson Tide, and I did that.
No, you don't have. Oh, we're
I have
closer.
the same list as you, Paul, except for I don't have
No,
You have
Beverly Hills
True
except
Cop.
Romance.
Crimson
You have True
Tide
Romance.
and Beverly Hills Cop.
You
It's
didn't have
not the
Beverly Hills
same
Nobody had
Cop
list.
Beverly Hills Cop. That's what I'm surprised at. Well, anyways, it's time to vote, guys. We all have three different lists.
I vote for mine.
True.
I vote for Paul's.
I was gonna vote
What?
for it too. So I think just because you guys didn't have Beverly Hills Cop, like each of you had a
The Last Boy Scout is what ruined it for me for you.
yeah, I also agree. I
No, Last Boy Scout is
Dude, look at the
all
movies
entertainment
you
all the
left off
time.
Enemy of the State to put Last Boy Scout.
yeah, I agree.
Last Boy Scout's amazing.
That's a cardinal sin, Pete. So I do win this one. So we already had a pre-meeting, fans and friends here of the Action Podcast. There's several movies that were under deliberation. I'm going to throw a curveball to us only because I want it to be the most relevant movie now. And we had a few movies we were debating: Dark Knight, Interstellar, Iron Man.
Glorious Bastards.
No, that wasn't quite on there. But
Let's
I'm
get
gonna
on that.
go only because I'm gonna go this movie only because this actually I think is the second highest grossing movie of all time. It's the
Norbit?
newest movie of all time, but I'm gonna go Avengers Endgame. And we haven't done a Marvel film yet. And I just want to see how the reception is because we haven't done it yet. And I know, Drew, you got a little bit of homework to do, so this
It's
won't be.
crazy that we wouldn't start with like Iron Man, which is what like we started.
We're gonna do
as-
Iron Man. Iron Man's gonna be on the
started the whole
list.
time.
Dark Knight's gonna be on. Like we're gonna do Dark Knight. We're gonna do Iron Man. We're gonna do these, but Avengers
And Norbert.
Endgame. Avenger Endgame to me, it's on another level on films. Like I've never seen a film when it was a 19 film payoff, like something along those lines. Like it was ridiculous. And whether it's Return of the Jedi, whether it's Revenge of the or not Revenge of the Sith, uh, Rise of the Skywalker, like this is a different type of film because it ends a series and it had so much buildup, and then to have it pay off, I just I want to talk about it. I think again it's relevant because we're still in the MCU universe. We haven't done an MCU film yet, so I want to tap that pipeline
Badass.
and see what's up.
Yeah.
So
Or that pipeline. Yeah.
yeah, type that pipeline.
That's what I was gonna say.
Well,
Tap that
thank you
pipeline.
guys for joining us with it. This was an excellent podcast as always. Love me some Crimson Tide. Thank you, Drew. Thank you, Pete. Make sure you catch our other episodes as well. We've done Tombstone Wedding Crashers. We've also done a Phantom Menace one. It's not the same level as this one, but we did it with the anniversary of the 25th anniversary on that one. We've all Drew and I, we just reviewed Stalag 17. Check that one out. Pete and I, we did a movie news episode. Check that one out as well. And then we recently reviewed Bad Boys. Definitely check that one out. So with that, guys, thanks for joining. Please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And with that is a cut. Thanks, guys.